I have to give this game credit. It's an original concept. You control two different animals as they go through their normal lives as they scrounge for food and fight to stay alive from the other animals. But does that make it a fun game to play? Kinda. If you can't stand spiders or other insects, you will be very creeped out by the game's characters. All the creatures in the game look great, and there were quite a few frights in the game to keep you on edge. You play as a spider and a scorpion. Each has their own obstacles to overcome in the area that they're traveling, and every other level you switch between them. I think the spider levels were more puzzle-based, while the scorpion levels were more about fighting. There's also an overarching story in the background about two guys who are looking for gold. You hear about their adventure in the background as you're playing the levels.
Whoa, hold on. Hey man, is this valuable?
No, it's quartz.
Well, that's some kind of crystal, right? You know, like on them shopping networks on TV.
Get digging.
Alright, fine, whatever. I'm keeping it.
The problem with doing that is the background story is what's supposed to keep us going through the game, but it's barely there for 75% of the game. It wasn't until I got towards the very end of the game that it finally came into play. Also, it was strange that they got Billy Bob Thornton and Dennis Hopper to do the voices. It seemed like such a waste of their talent for such a relatively small part. The game itself, though, is solid. The worlds that you had to travel in feel real. It was completely confusing to navigate in most of the time, but it still seemed right for the locations that you're at. It showed what spiders and scorpions might have to navigate in on a normal basis. They have a hint button that you can push anytime that will give you an arrow in the direction where you should go, and you will rely on it a lot. As you travel around the world, you'll come upon other animals, and none of them are friendly, so you're going to have to fight them. A lot of the attacks were tied into the motion controls. You would move the Wiimote and Nunchuck in different directions to do different kinds of attacks, and those worked quite well. I wish the same could have been said for the QuickTime events. I had some problems with it reading some of my motions. This was a huge problem when I was trying to avoid all these spiders. I died over 20 times. And while it was nice that they put the save right next to the event, it took way too long to reload the save file. It was extremely frustrating to die and then wait 30 seconds for it to reload. And it was even more annoying that it wasn't even my fault. It just would not read one of the certain motion controls correctly. Since it changes the button or motion that you had to do each time you do the QuickTime event, I did finally beat this QuickTime event when I got lucky with almost all push Z's. The spider's specialty moves were that it could walk up walls and shoot out webs that could access areas that were too hard to get to normally, or it might just use its web to slow down an oncoming enemy. The scorpion, on the other hand, was a bit slower, but more powerful. He could also dig in certain areas so he could find different ways around blocked locations. He would fight with his pinchers, but if he got the enemy down enough in health, he could do a quite violent finishing move. This game was a bit brutal, but you have to understand that's what would normally happen when a spider or a scorpion kills something. While it may look like the worlds are open to explore, it's not. There are things that will constantly block your path, so you will find that the game is more on rails than you would expect. At the end of every level is a boss fight. It could be anything from Gila monsters, snakes, or even the other character that you're controlling. It was a bit cool that the two characters that you're controlling fight each other once in a while. The camera in the game was a problem as it would often get stuck in weird positions. You could easily just switch it back, but it would get problematic when you're fighting other animals, and you don't have time to do that. The game is quite short. I beat the game in less than 4 hours. But if you're a completist, there were over 400 grubs to find in the 10 levels of the game. So at least there's a little bit of replayability. There is also a gallery of concept art and video interviews with Billy Bob Thornton and Dennis Hopper that you can unlock. My problem with the game was that it really wasn't that compelling to play. In fact, it could be a bit boring at times. But with that said, the game is one you should play if not for the unique nature of the game itself. And I do think Deadly Creatures is worth a rent.